Did you know there are 10 ways that you could be self-sabotaging yourself? Are you feeling stuck in your career or even just in your life? This self-sabotaging behavior, they're career stallers, and it's why you're feeling so unfulfilled, unhappy, and not moving forward the way you want. Today, we're going to talk about them, but then talk about how to shift your mindset and start moving forward. Hi, I'm Jovita, and thanks for watching Grow with Jovita, where I discuss career advice and leadership development tips that's going to help you advance your career. So, what are the 10 ways that you could be self-sabotaging yourself? Maybe you don't even realize you're doing it. I'm going to go over the 10 things defined by Shirzad Chamine in his book, Positive Intelligence. If you've never heard of this book, then check out my other video where I do a book review and talk about why I recommend this video and who it's for. In the book, he talks about the 10 mental blocks that we all have and that can interfere with our ability to move forward, to progress, and be successful. I'm going to go through the 10 and you tell me which one sounds like you. The first one is the judge, and we all have the judge within us, that judgment, and really we can be very hard on ourselves or very critical of ourselves and others. We all have this as our main saboteur because we're constantly passing judgment. Second one he mentions is what he refers to as the stickler. This is that tendency for perfectionism, where we want everything to be perfect, and when it's not perfect, we don't move forward. So this is why we're stuck, because we don't want to get started. We're doing a ton of research before we make a decision. We're trying to perfect and design everything in a perfect way. This is a really hard trap for entrepreneurs who are trying to put themselves out on social media or launch a product, just anything where they're trying to get started, but they feel like it has to be perfect before it gets done. The next one is the pleaser. You tend to be a people pleaser. You don't want to ruffle any feathers at work. Also, if somebody's making a mistake, you probably have the tendency to just cover for them. So you're taking on additional work to cover that they are making the mistake. You don't want to say anything. You don't want to get them in trouble. You also have a hard time giving feedback or expressing those things. So all of that is going to contribute to holding you back in your career. The next one is the hyperachiever. This is somebody who really is focused on achieving these high results. This external success is what's important to them. So the next raise, the next promotion, the highest level that they can achieve, and they're constantly working towards that. These are people who tend to be the workaholics. Another saboteur that he mentions is the victim. So this is somebody who wants to be a martyr. They always want to do the woe is me, and I've worked so hard, and I did this and I did that, and it was such a strain on me, because they really want attention. They want people to be like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Do you need help? They really want that attention. And so they kind of play the victim when things don't go their way at work. The next one is a hyper rational person. So this is a person who tends not to be very empathetic, and they always want to see the logic in things. They have a hard time understanding maybe the human behavior and the emotions behind people's decisions and choices that they make. This is going to be difficult when you're working on a team, because everybody's different. Everybody has a different style, a different personality, and you can't just expect everything to go one way and have a logical, rational explanation. You have to be able to be empathetic, to listen very well to others. So this can be something that is holding you back. Someone who's hyper vigilant. So this is a person where they feel like they can't make a decision because they're worried about making the wrong decision. If they do A, but then B could have been done, and then they overthink and overthink, well, what if I would have done B? What if I would have done this? What if I would have done this? So they're always worried that they're going to make a choice and then a better choice could have happened, or something different would have happened. And so this is another one where you either spend so much time stressing yourself out overthinking, or you don't take any action. You don't make any decisions because you're too busy trying to make sure that you choose correctly. Restlessness. This is having that constantly being busy feeling, like can't sit still, can't do anything. And we all know that being busy is not the same thing as being productive. So you might not be working on the high impact activities that actually add value, that are going to get you a raise or a promotion. Another part of being restless is you don't take time to celebrate your successes. So when you're growing and developing, you're all like, okay, on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. Even if you do earn your raise or promotion, you're already thinking of the next thing and not understanding how to really set a solid foundation and get good in that level before you try to advance to the next step. Just a few more. So the controller, this is somebody who wants to do everything themselves or wants to be the one who decides how everything gets done. We've probably all had people like this who are like the micromanagers, right? They want to tell you exactly what work to do, how to do it, when to do it. This person believes that their way is the only way. And finally, the avoider. And this is just somebody who frankly just avoids any kind of conflict, any type of challenge, anything that puts them out of their comfort zone, they're going to avoid it. So again, when you're avoiding things, you're not growing, you're not developing, you're not having the right conversations, and you're really being held back in your career. Now you're probably telling yourself, well, I'm just avoiding things so that it's easier for me and it's less stressful and I'm okay over here. Nobody's telling me that I'm doing anything wrong, but this is why it's a mental block and you need to stop doing that. So let's talk about how we can get past these mental blocks and these saboteurs and stop self-sabotaging ourselves and get unstuck in our careers and in our lives. So tell me, of those 10, which ones resonated with you? We all have the judge according to Shirzad, but we usually have one or two other saboteurs that are our main go-to, our mental blocks that come up, the thoughts and negative emotions that come up time after time again. I'm definitely a hyperachiever and a little bit of that restless feeling. I'm constantly setting goals. I'm constantly thinking 3 steps ahead, 4 steps ahead, and I have to consciously and intentionally make sure that I'm taking a step back to enjoy the progress and enjoy the process and be mindful of what I'm doing. By learning how to shift my mindset, I have implemented different tools so that it doesn't hold me back. And that's what we're going to talk about for you. What tools can you implement so that these mental blocks, these saboteurs, these things that are holding you back, you can shift that. And instead, what Shirzad talks about is like, instead of your mind and these thoughts being an enemy to you, they can be your friend. They can actually help you. So for example, with the judge, we all have judgments, but like that's how our brain works. There's so much information that we have to make these judgments and comparisons, but they don't have to always be negative. So you don't have to be overly critical and comparing yourself to others or hard on yourself or letting all that self-doubt get in. You can use the judgment correctly to make really good decisions, to know which directions to go, what paths that you should take, to understand things that align with you and things that don't, right? So you can use the information in a positive way to make really good decisions and make sure that you're on track. So you can use the thoughts as the enemy, as he says, or it can be your friend. So again, I ask you, which of these things are you doing? And let's talk about how you can improve them. For me, being the hyperachiever and really switching gears, it definitely took some time and it took a lot of self-awareness and self-management. I talk about this a lot when I talk about emotional intelligence because you really need that to be able to identify when things are triggering you. I actually mentioned this in my workshop on managing negative emotions at work and really helping you switch so that your thoughts and your feelings go from being harmful to being useful, right? You have a lot more control on how you respond to things than you might think. So really starting to understand that self-awareness and self-management piece is going to help you combat these self-sabotaging behaviors and take these career stallers from being a threat to being an opportunity for you to grow and advance and demonstrate these skills that you're going to need in order to advance your career. Let me give you a perfect example. I used to be somebody who had a lot of the controller tendencies. And Shirzad talks about this in his book. Some of these self-sabotaging behaviors have been ingrained in us since we were children because it's just the nature of how we were brought up. It could have to do with, situations or circumstances that we grew up in. And so we kind of created these things to kind of help us survive and get through that. And in my career, early in my career, as the controller, I always felt like if I wanted to advance, I needed to take control. I couldn't wait for people to tell me what to do. And so I just started figuring stuff out on my own and like pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing of like, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. I didn't really care about what other people thought. I just was like, I'm going to push ahead and I'm going to get the results. And so you don't have a choice but to reward me, acknowledge me, pay me, because I'm getting the results regardless of who is getting hurt in the fire. I actually had one of my bosses refer to me as a bulldozer because I was just pushing and pushing and pushing so far and trying to control everything. Well, that helped me get to a certain level, certainly, but when it was time for me to step into management, this was completely a staller for me. I could not get into a management position, and I was like, why? Why do I keep being stuck and not being able to get that next promotion? And it was because people didn't like working with me. People felt like I was trying to tell them what to do, how to do it, and that I made them feel stupid because I wanted everything to be done my way and I didn't trust them to do things their own way. So I had to learn how to delegate and to train people and to trust that people are going to do things, and they might do it completely different from how I do it, but we can still get the same results. So that is a huge shift. And so what I'm saying is that it's possible. I've done it, and so you can do it too. I actually go in a lot more detail about the 10 saboteurs in a recent podcast episode I did with Sara Mayer. So Sara actually is the one who recommended the book to me because it's part of her book club. So I'll drop the podcast link if you want to get a little bit more details about the 10 saboteurs, the lies that we tell ourselves of why they're necessary. For example, if you're the stickler, that perfectionist, you're probably telling yourself that, well, this gets me the best results, right? Because I'm waiting until I have perfection, so then my results are greater when I put this perfect thing out there. But again, you're likely not putting anything out there because you're waiting so long where time has passed, and you could have gotten faster results or better results if you had gotten started earlier. But I want to move on and talk about how you can combat these saboteurs right now and start to make some improvements. So Shirzad actually talks about this in the form of a sage. I like that throughout the book he uses kind of characters and names to describe them. But the way that he describes the sage is, this is like your positive mindset, your self-management tools, the things that you're going to do to kind of shift and start looking at things differently. So every thought that you have isn't true. It isn't fact. You don't have to act on it. You can take a moment to really pause and reframe what you're doing. The first part of the sage that he talks about is being open-minded. So that means you do have to be open-minded, that you don't have all the answers. Other people are going to be able to contribute and collaborate and be successful, so that you're not thinking like, again, I have to be the controller. I have to be the perfectionist. I have to be so critical and judgmental of myself, right? The second thing that he talks about is that empathy piece of really having empathy and giving yourself grace, and also that to other people. Like understanding that we're all on a growth and development journey, and we're all at different stages of our journey. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to do everything correctly. Even if we display some of these saboteurs, instead of beating ourselves up about it, like, oh my gosh, I played the victim again, or I was people pleasing again. Instead of beating yourself up about it, let's kind of have some empathy in the situation and really think through. So again, in my workshop, I talk about this a lot of when you have these emotions, like really digging into the why. Like, why do you feel the need to do this people pleasing behavior? Why do you feel the need to play the victim? And really identifying the triggers inside that are causing that to happen. So the other thing he talks about is to innovate and create perspectives outside of the box. So he's talking about outside of the box thinking. The way that you've always done things doesn't mean that's the way it has to be done. I have to say, like in my job, in my career, that is like my most hated phrase, when people are like, but that's the way it's always been done. That is a sign, that's like a red flag for me of like, there's a problem here. If you think that we just continue to do things forever because that's the way it's been done, it does not work. When you're working on a team and you have different people and everybody has different backgrounds and different skill sets, you you have to be flexible and adjust to that. And if you don't, again, this is why you're getting stalled in your career. There's not a single person who's watching this video who doesn't have to work with other people, right? So you have teammates, you have bosses, you might have direct reports. Even if you are an entrepreneur, solopreneur, you have clients, you have customers, you have partners that you're trying to collaborate with. You have to work with other people. Then the fourth one that he talks about is, it says, navigate and choose a path that best fits your vision and mission. So he's really talking about that alignment. And this is why, again, I say emotional intelligence is so important, because if you're not self-aware of your values and your vision and the things that you want, it's going to be hard for you to stay aligned. So you really need to make sure that you have that self-awareness already. And then finally, activate your mind and make decisions without the distractions of the saboteur. So again, it's really having that ability to self-manage and say, I hear these thoughts, I'm not going to let them dictate how I behave and how I act. I'm going to reframe things in my mind and really try to move forward in a positive way. I know that was a ton. Definitely go back and watch the video again if you need to go through it. I also talked about a lot of other resources. My Managing Emotions workshop is really a good starting point. Like I said in my book review, the Positive Intelligence book is maybe not a starting point. If this is the first time you've heard about this or heard about emotional intelligence or mindset shift, you probably want to start in a lower way. The next video that you should watch so you know where to get started is Emotional Triggers in the Workplace. So you really want to identify just 3 to 5 of the top things that are triggering you, figure out how to reframe them, and then you can grow from there. Let me know what you think in the comments about what's holding you back in your career. And if you're ready to make a change and start to do something different and really get unstuck, then reach out to me and we can talk about coaching and mentorship. You can visit me at growwithjovita.com, and again, check out this next video coming up on the emotional triggers at work. This is going to help you get started by just identifying the 3 to 5 top things, how to reframe them, and how to actually do that on the fly in the moment so that you can start to feel better at work and have a different perception at work.